The other day, I shared a video talking about the need to love the process, the necessity of enjoying all of the small aspects of your work. And so I was going through my story today. It's taking longer than I thought to read through all this, just because I'm going through it with sort of a deliberate reading. I'm not necessarily just reading through just to make notes and corrections. I'm studying the pages right now, and I'm looking at it. I'm trying to imagine what this story can now become instead. So it's taking me a bit longer. And mixed in with all this is this very, very large sense of self-doubt. It's this sense of, that this story is never going to be published. It's that feeling of insecurity that your writing is not strong. Right now, I'm feeling that a lot, and it's as I sort of step back now and record this and think back. I think most of the writing process, the majority of the process of actually writing, if you took every single day that you worked on a project, more of it than not is going to be filled with that negativity. More days, if it took you a year to write that novel, more than 6 months of that novel, I suspect, is going to be filled with either feelings of insecurity or frustration. Either your work is terrible and you don't know how to fix it, and you're a hack writer, or it's I don't know how to fix this. This is crazy. I can't believe that this story isn't getting done faster. It's piled on, piled on, piled on layers of frustration. And so the only thing that counteracts this self-doubt, this worry, is the feeling that the outcome doesn't matter. It's the feeling that you are writing for the sake of writing itself. You are writing because it's something that you enjoy. It's, regardless of what happens, just the act of sitting there and doing the work, that is where you derive your pleasure. That is the cure for this insecurity. It's the cure for the frustration, the self-doubt. All of your feelings of angst and of those negative thoughts, they're tied to something else beyond the act of writing. It's tied to a deeper worry that your work will never be published, a worry that no one will ever read your work, a fear that you'll never make any money as a writer. All these extra things that are tied into it have nothing to do with the act of writing itself. And so, if you can enjoy that process, if you can sit down and love just the act of being at your desk every day, that will stave off the negativity. That will hold you through. If you've ever been to a writer's meetup, a writer's hangout, not so much a critique group or a convention, but perhaps to just like a local writers event, what you'll see what I've found is that you'll tend to see a large amount of the writers. Yeah, they're relatively, novice to maybe intermediate level writers, some that have really good promise, some that don't, various degrees of skill. But what I tend to find a lot too is I will find these writers that are maybe in approaching around 70 years old. They're not, they've maybe had some work published in the past, but they're not actively trying to get a book published at all. And there are these fantastic, you read their work, it's fantastic. You read some of these writers or even some of these poets that go to some of these local conventions, and it's like, you read it and you can't believe it. You're like, wow, this is fantastic work. The writing is just phenomenal here. And they're not necessarily published. They're not out there with books on the shelves. And yet you read their work and you can't believe it. And it's because they've approached writing, this mentality is they've approached writing as a joyous act. Yes, they like being part of a sense of a writer community. I'm sure they have their plenty of their own self-doubts, but they approach writing with this very sort of leisurely aspect to it. And because they've approached that, they've been able to do it for decades and decades and decades and decades, building up this skill. And the self-doubt never really crushed them because they've always seen writing either as perhaps a hobby or just a pastime. They've never put that pressure to make it more than what it is. They've loved writing just for the simple act of coming up with an idea and then creating it and bringing it to life. And I think that it's a lesson I need to learn myself to sort of curtail my ambition. I've gone into this sabbatical. I've gone into working on these projects with this sort of I guess entrepreneur mentality. This very hustle sort of mentality of, all right, get this done so we can get this book out there and you can get on and there's always another project so you can move on to this next project you got in your head. And I need, but from that mentality, what springs from that is all the additional attachments, all those additional worries. The moment I start thinking, okay, this book need to start hustling, get this book out there so it gets published, I start putting all this worry of, oh man, this book, okay, this is really terrible here, this line's really bad, this section right here is not good, I can't believe it, how am I ever gonna fix this? All these extra worries come in the moment I tie in any additional attachments beyond just the act of writing. And these can all be true. Like I'm not saying that going in without the intention of publishing means that you can just forego not making these changes. But these changes tend to magnify. These issues seem to magnify beyond what they are the moment you put any external expectations for what you want at the end of it. And so when I say enjoy the process, it's not just a matter of, well, you're going to spend a lot of time writing and it doesn't make sense to be miserable and hating it just because at the end you want some sort of reward. It's also because it's your shield. It's your barrier against that self-doubt. If you can just go in every day and just write and at the end of it tell yourself, well, that was good. I really enjoyed just the pleasure of being at the desk every day. Approach that for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Your writing will absolutely blossom. Like your writing will just shoot up because you've never had to put anything more. You've never had that worry and that self-doubt placed upon it. You've just gone in there and built up the habit of writing by writing consciously and with an attention to detail, but never putting anything more on you. And so if I was to summarize this, to kind of wrap this entire idea of what I'm trying to get out there up, I suppose what I would say is when you feel that external worry, when you start feeling that self-doubt, learn to mentally detach from it. Detach from anything beyond just what your project immediately is. Your project, your writing project, is a story. That's all it is. It is you just working at some part in the process of getting a story finished. That's all it is. That is the immediate. Anything else is simply a mental game you've put upon yourself. It's an idea, an ethereal concept. Publication in the future, the other people reading your book in the future. These are just concepts in your mind that you're adding onto it. If you can detach from that, forget anything that you've coaxed in your mind, if you can let that go and focus solely on just the immediate sphere of reality, I guess that's the word I made up here, just focus on the immediate item of, here's a book, you have something you want to fix about it today, let's just tinker with it and fix it. If you can keep those blinders on, keep focused on just that small, narrow item, that will pull you through. That will be the primer that gets the engine going again, that gets your writing process kickstarted, that gets you moving and gets this whole thing going further. And then what will happen is the entire writing process is simply a curve. It's such a fluctuation. It's periods of self doubt and hatred and all this insecurity, followed by a nice little upswing where the pendulum goes up a little bit. The bar graph, the it's a bar graph. The graph, the plot points on the graph basically start shooting up, and then all of a sudden the parabola goes down again. Right? There's more insecurity, more worry. It's a fluctuating cycle. There's never some homeostatic place where you feel secure with your writing and you just go about for weeks and months on end feeling good. It's always a varying degree of emotion towards your work. And so you're going to experience many days where you had this self doubt. I've been doing write every day, this write every day thing for almost 70 days now, and I've made at least a few videos where I've talked about insecurity, I've talked about worry, I've talked about fear with working on this project. There's going to be more. I know for myself, I'm going to have plenty more, especially the closer you get to finishing. And that's honestly where the worst part comes in. The closer you get to finishing your story, the worse, the more that self doubt creeps in. It's like I mean, even the Greeks knew this. If you read the story of Odysseus, at the start of the book, he almost reaches home. The entire story of the Odyssey is simply him trying to get back to his home. And at one point, very early in the book, he almost gets there. And it's right when he can see the shoreline from his boat that someone unbags, I think opens a bag of wind or something like that, and casts him like hundreds and thousands of, I don't know, thousands of miles away from home. And he has to spend years and years getting back home. That's a metaphor for success. It's the metaphor of the closer you get to it, the more that self doubt is going to come in. That the closer you get to achieving something, the more you're going to feel all these worries and all these insecurities, because people are going to look at your work now. People are going to see it. People are going to judge it. And so, this sort of devil may care attitude is going to be the thing that's going to get you to the end without having that nervous breakdown, without having that crippling writer's block that has you locked away from your office for months and months and turns you away. This ability to just not care about anything else besides just what your immediate goal is and enjoying writing for the sake of writing.